Well, the Locked On NHL hosts have voted on their top 5 defensemen and top 5 goalies. Both Roman Josi and Juuse Saros make the list, but are they a little bit too low? Plus, a major omission in the polls for the top forwards. We're going to talk about that coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and we appreciate the support you give us week after week. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, on today's show, the Locked On NHL hosts have all gotten together and put together a series of top 5 polls. We voted on pretty much everything. Top 5 wingers, top 5 defensemen, top 5 centers, goalies, players under 25, including some fun stuff, mascots and NHL logos.
The important things.
The important things in life. So we're going to get through the results, but there's a couple of things of note for Nashville Predators fans, including a couple of players that ranked.
Yeah. Let's talk about our 2. I think they're pretty obvious. Who's going to make it?
We don't need to kind of beat around the bush.
No, there's no need for a drum roll here, y'all. Juuse Saros made the list, and so did Roman Josi.
Yeah. So let's start in the bag. Let's start with the top 5 NHL goalies, because I feel like this is the hot button one. And so putting up the list, we have Juuse Saros ranked 4th. Which I think both of us have some feelings about that.
Oh, we do.
And in terms of the votes, we had Andrei Vasilevskiy 1st, Igor Shesterkin 2nd, Connor Hellebuck 3rd, Saros 4th, and then Ilya Sorokin rounding out the top 5. And your thoughts on Juuse Saros 4th in the NHL in terms of goaltending?
Look, I have said it before, and I will say it again. Juuse Saros is chronically overlooked in the NHL. Yes, people talk about him. Yes, he generates some buzz. But I feel like really the essence of his game, the things that he does that are so exceptional are overlooked by things like basic stats. And I feel like this is just another case of that, where it's like, yeah, he's a pretty good goalie. Let's put him in the top 5. But I feel like, especially where some of these other guys are coming into this next season, like, how in the name of Sam Hill and Bob Howdy do we have Saros 4th and in the top 5? How is he not up maybe 3, 2? Could an argument be made for 1? I don't know. But I do feel like it's a little bit low. And I don't feel like that is just the optimist in me. I really feel like Juuse Saros is perennially underappreciated in the league.
Yeah. In terms of, because I feel like there's like legacy that comes into play here. And obviously Vasilevskiy has 2 Stanley Cups and another appearance, last year in the Stanley Cup finals. 2 years ago, obviously. And, a couple of Vezinas. So I feel like he's got the lock on number 1. And I feel like Shesterkin, based on what he did last year, is kind of that, he's like the next big goaltender in waiting. But you look at, let's look at the top 3 years, or the last 3 years, which are like the 3 full years that Juuse Saros has been the number 1. Sure, no questions asked, number 1 goaltender in Nashville.
Right.
Other than stuff like shutouts, like his save percentage is better than Andrei Vasilevskiy. His high danger save percentage is better than Andrei Vasilevskiy. His stolen wins are better than Andrei Vasilevskiy. So you're, in terms of that, like if you're saying, well, like, based on legacy, Vasilevsky's the number one guy. If there's a guy that's been consistently better than him game by game over the past 3 years, shouldn't that guy be higher?
Yeah. It seems like simple math to me. And I always am curious about what weighs into somebody's decision. And I do think there is, whether you like it or not, there is an element of like, well, Vasilevsky, because he's been around and he's done a lot. But you also look at like Andre Vasilevsky, his postseason last season, it was rough. Like he had a rough postseason. Juuse Saros didn't, because he had no postseason. So I hear that, people. I understand that. But I think, gosh, let's look a little bit closer. How far back do you need to go, or how much is reputation? How much is things like you said, winning 2 Stanley Cups? How much does that predict the future? And at some point it stops being a factor. And I feel like what Juuse Saros has done with the team that he's had in front of him, I think is a little bit more impressive. I think of Juuse Saros, he's like the yen in Ocean's 11. You know what I'm saying? Like he is the guy that gets in the cash cart and ends up, he's the only guy in the vault. Like, yes, you need like the explosive dudes and the great drivers, and you need the guys to rappel down the elevator shaft and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately what matters is you've got yen in the vault. And Saros is the yen in the vault for the Nashville Predators, and he has been. And I think some of these other teams maybe don't have or don't need the value from their goaltender like the Predators need their value from Juuse Saros. You take Saros out of the last 3 years, Nick, it's a very, very different, and not that the Predators had raging success the last 3 years, but it's a whole nother ball game.
The reason Juuse Saros is so low on lower than he should be on this list is just the team in front of him isn't good.
100%.
Like, if the Predators are a smidge better, I think, and like Juuse Saros gets, I don't know, 2-3 more shutouts in each season.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're seeing him with a little bit more respect.
Yeah.
Connor Hellebuyck, that's the debate. I feel like, Seth Tubal and I had this debate on Locked On NHL last week, like Juuse versus Hellebuyck is the best goalie in the West. Like I could understand putting Hellebuyck ahead of Juuse Saros, just because Hellebuyck beat him head to head a number of times last year, like kind of out-dueled him. And B, it's same situation. Like, not much happening in front of him. And Hellebuyck was the one that kind of willed him to the playoffs, and Saros wasn't. That to me is like the one debating. But here's the thing. I understand why people voted the way they did, but to me, Juuse Saros is one of the top 3 goalies in this league.
I agree. And I think he's somebody that will end up being in the Vezina conversation. The one thing that I want to see from Saros that I think will help with that, and that I think will make a huge difference for this Nashville Predators team, is how he starts right out of the gate. I think that is going to be so important, not just for Saros down the line with the Vezina conversation, but I think it's going to be huge for this team, because if Saros can start strong, which we've talked about, sometimes he takes a little while to simmer and warm up, but if Saros can start in October and play really well in a tough October schedule, it's going to go a long way with confidence for a young team. So I think there's a lot riding on Saros's early performance this season.
Well, we had another Nashville Predator wind up in the top 5 of his respected position. I think we know who it is. His name rhymes with Bowman Josi. We'll see where he landed on the NHL's top 5 defenseman list coming up in just a second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season, it's here, folks. And right now, FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. That's right. All you have to do is pick any team you want to win the Super Bowl. And each time they win during the regular season, you'll get bonus bets for each victory. You can use bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Ann, another top 5 list that was voted on was the top 5 NHL defensemen. Here is how our Locked On hosts voted. We had Cale Makar, #1. Not really a big surprise there.
Yeah.
Erik Karlsson, #2. And then we have Adam Fox, Miro Heiskanen, and Roman Josi. What do you think about this list, Ann?
It's hard to argue some of it, and again, I go back to what goes into this voting. You look at last season, God bless him, Cale Makar, phenomenal defenseman. I think he's the #1 defenseman. Obviously he's going to be there, but gosh, he had a lot of injury last season, concussion, upper body, lower body, played 60 games. If he is healthy, he is 100, he is, the #1 guy going into this. If he is healthy. Erik Karlsson, this one is so interesting to me. The Erik Karlsson story is one of my favorite little projects that I'm going to be watching this season because, you have this Norris Trophy winner, amazing season. He's like 857 years old in hockey years, now headed to Pittsburgh and wants to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm like, do you think Pittsburgh is in Stanley Cup contention? So I think that's going to be an interesting one to unfold. Yeah. What is that going to look like with Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh? Yeah. I love that, he talked about like, look, I found this reignited passion for my game and I'm really excited. So I think it's going to be fun to watch him. I'm just curious about what the results are going to look like for Erik Karlsson. But I think just in general, he's generated a lot of buzz. Like I said, recently won the Norris Trophy. So I get that one. Adam Fox, I think he's the guy that's just always on the list. Like he's the pretty blonde girl that always makes the homecoming court.
Yeah. I think the one that like maybe I could argue is Heiskanen.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like Josi's been more impactful to the team. Here's my thing about Karlsson. Like I understand why people are there, but last year was like his one good year in, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And people talk about him. It's like, oh, this is like an amazing year he had. Nothing like this hasn't been done. Like, well, how incredible is this? And, of course he's a Norris because this is just one for the record books. He only scored 5 more points than Roman Josi did the year before and had pretty much like the same defensive metrics. Right. And I think the only thing like I would say is it always just feels like we talk about Roman Josi's season 2 years ago differently than we talk about Erik Karlsson's season last year. Like how many people, like I get if Cale Makar was your Norris winner, like that's fine. But like how many people went to bat like against Roman Josi to poke holes
right
in his, what he did that season and how good of a defenseman he is. Like how many people like went out of their way to just start poking holes in Roman Josi's game. And it just doesn't seem like we do that same thing with Erik Karlsson, even though we could, because last year was great. He wasn't good for there was talk of him having the worst contract in the entire NHL before last season. So I don't know. To me, that's like the one thing that like kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Right. And I wonder if Cale Makar had stayed healthy, if this would have been a repeat, where what would have happened then? Would you all have valued Cale Makar's defensive metrics above Erik Karlsson's offensive metrics like you did with Roman Josi and made that argument? Or would you still have gone with Erik Karlsson? One has to wonder about that. And did somebody entirely leave Roman Josi off of their list? Yes, folks, somebody did.
Yeah.
We don't forget things. There's room next to Corey Perry in my invisible backpack of hockey grudges.
Yeah. Let's get through some other top 5 list.
Yeah.
Well, we top 5 NHL centers.
Oh gosh.
No, not really a big surprise here.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid, #1, Leon Draisaitl, #2, and then we had McKinnon, Matthews, and Hughes. No Sidney Crosby. And which to me, that's a little surprising because he can certainly still play.
He can, but I think people feel like there is a page turning in his chapter. The book's not finished, but I think people feel like the plot's wrapping up for Sidney Crosby, which is why I think the Penguins were so in on Erik Karlsson. I think they really want that plot twist of the Penguins are back in contention. Will it happen? I don't know. Look, I'm not going to lie. Personally, I'm okay with Sidney Crosby not making the top 5.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting omission. Like, is the league kind of viewing him as like on the decline,
like old news? Yeah,
old news. And can he really be as good as he was? I think it's interesting that all of a sudden this is one of those players that it seems like the league is going, is he done? Is he almost done?
Yeah, I would have put him 5th. Just because I feel like Luke Hughes, not Luke Hughes, one of the Hugheses.
One of the Hugheses.
Jack Hughes, incredible season last year. This time next year is probably surefire. I just feel like maybe just one more season before I would have put that on there.
Yeah. How did the Preds look in that top center thing there, Nick?
I don't even think they had a vote in there.
No, they didn't. I keep coming back to this. Is that going to be the nail in the coffin for the Predators in the future, not having this elite top center?
They're going to need to find somebody.
Yeah.
I think just to step in.
Yeah.
It's like maybe Cody Glass gets there and is just maybe a solid B+ center. And maybe that's what the Preds need. But I mean, Barry Trotz has mentioned it. Like you got to find a number one guy.
Yeah.
However you do it. There was another interesting, there's, other lists. There's NHL top 5 wingers, and there is nobody from the Nashville Predators who is even on the ballot, which means no Filip Forsberg. How do we feel about that? We're going to talk about that in just a second. Plus, what's the best logo in the NHL?
I have thoughts.
We have thoughts on that one for sure. We're going to do that in just 1 second. But first, want to remind you that Locked On Predators is your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Coming up next week, we talked about this earlier this week. We are doing the top 25 Nashville Predators of all time. We have a special series of shows coming up. We're going to be counting them down 25 through 1, going through some of the best players in team history, including some names you might have forgotten. This is a list I think will have people talking because it's our list and we can do it however you want. So make sure you guys tune in starting next week, and we'll go through some of these names with you. All right, Ann, let's go to the top 5 NHL wingers. Let's talk first, because Locked On put 20, 25 names on the ballot. Filip Forsberg was not one of the people on the ballot. How do we feel about that?
I'm going to err on the side of grace and say it's because of his injury, but I do think, again, the Nashville Predators, there is just something about being a middle market team without that. We've got great core players. You're talking about Josi, you're talking about Saros, you're talking about Filip Forsberg, but they don't necessarily stand out off of the ice. And I feel like it's a chronic overlook problem here in Nashville. And I do think we're going to chalk this one up with grace and say it's because he was injured last season. But Filip Forsberg has got to be the guy. I've talked about this. This is his season to be the guy. You do not have Matt Duchene anymore, my friend. Ryan Johansson has gone. This is Filip Forsberg's opportunity to really be the guy for the Nashville Predators and to really draw some attention from the other teams and players in the league. So, pressure's on for Filip Forsberg. I think he can handle it. Look, I think he's overlooked. This is definitely somebody who I think should have made the top 25 list. But let's see what he does. This is a new situation for Forsberg this coming season.
Yeah, I would have at least put him on the list, right?
I mean, come on, y'all.
He should have at least been on the list. He's not top 5 or top 10, but Claude Giroux was on the list. When was the last time Claude Giroux was a game-breaking player?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Andrei Kuzmenko. How many people that don't watch the NHL religiously know who Andrei Kuzmenko is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just put Filip Forsberg on the list.
Come on.
Here's how everybody voted. David Pastrnak, number 1 in the NHL right now. Then we have Matthew Tkachuk, Jason Robertson, Mitch Marner, and Nikita Kucherov rounding out the top 5. And I think the biggest snub to me on this list is Kucherov has got to be at least in your top 2.
You think so?
Kucherov has got to be in your top 2. I mean, I feel like just the fact that like Tampa Bay has kind of just been Tampa Bay for a while, and maybe they've kind of flew under the radar last year, but like Kucherov has been consistently good, minus like his one injury year where he missed like half the year.
Yeah.
Like he's just been consistently one of the top contributors in the entire NHL. Like he's got to be your top 2.
Yeah. The one that I think is going to make a big leap depending on next season is Jason Robertson. Y'all, this kid I think he is really poised to be one of those, top guys in the league if he can repeat the season that he had. So this is one that I'm keeping an eye on. I'm like, okay, you can put him at 3rd right now if you want. Maybe a little high. I don't know. But I think he's going to leapfrog and be one of the top guys in this league if he can repeat his season that he had. So I'm keeping an eye on Jason Robertson. Don't want to have him have great success because that's how I feel about the Dallas Stars. But I think, I think he could really be a guy long-term in the league.
Yeah. I vote like the way I voted, like I had Mikko Rantanen in the top 5.
Right. Yeah.
That's another guy I think is criminally underrated. And no Alexander Ovechkin on that list either.
There's a statement in that, y'all.
There is a statement. How about the NHL's top 5 under 22 years old? We have Jack Hughes, number 1, Tim Stützle, number 2, Connor Bedard, number 3. Quick thoughts on that. Matty Beniers, number 4, and Trevor Zegras, number 5. And here's like my one statement on Connor Bedard. And let's give him time.
Yes.
Like, let's not throw all of this on him. Like, he was like he got a lot of votes for like top 5 NHL centers. He may be great. Like, he may be like the best NHL player of our generation, but he also hasn't played an NHL game yet.
Right.
So that's kind of why I'm just saying it's like, let's let this guy kind of jump into the league and see what he does. Let's not start getting ahead of ourselves and saying like, oh, he's like the best player in the world and he's a top 5 center. He may do that. Like he may come out this year and just, smoke everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But let's wait for it to happen before we get ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's let Connor Bedard breathe, y'all. And I'm with you. Like, I would not at all be surprised if he comes out and just lights it up. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But again, kid's never played a minute of NHL hockey yet. Give him time to breathe. And what worries me is there is so much hype about what people expect him to do this season that, like, I worry that people are going to be disappointed. Like, it's almost hard to meet expectations this season if you're Connor Bedard. And that's not fair. Like, that's just not fair to a young player. Like, give this kid some room to breathe. And I hope he tunes out the noise and just does his thing. The mom in me worries about that. Tune out the noise, Connor Bedard, and just do your game, play your game. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Rest of the list, is fine. Don't really have any qualms about that. Maybe I would flip Zegras and Stützle, but
I thought that was interesting.
I also probably would have had Mo Seider in my top 5 as well. Here's a fun one, and the top 5 NHL logos. Here's what we had. We had Detroit number 1, which no qualms for me. Arizona number 2. Toronto number 3, Pittsburgh number 4, and the Seattle Kraken number 5. What do you think about that, Ann?
I have big feels on this logo vote.
Go for it.
I don't necessarily have a problem with Detroit because it is kind of cool. So I'm not gonna squawk about them being
iconic.
It's iconic, it's bold, it's I'm okay with that. Arizona Coyotes, It's not my cup of tea, but I get why it's one of the main ones. It's not my color palette. It's not my in my color wheel, but I
It's
like
awesome,
it.
though.
It's
an awesome logo.
It's just not my personal preference, but yes, I completely understand why it is voted as an awesome logo. Like, I love the angles of it, and all of that kind of stuff. So I get that one. Toronto Maple Leafs, y'all, it's a leaf with letters.
But it's iconic.
As a leaf with letters.
But it's like one of the most recognizable logos. It's just simple, it's classic, just blue and white. Like,
it's a leaf, Nick. It's a leaf with letters. Here's the one I have the biggest beef with, and that is the Pittsburgh Penguins logo. First of all,
I'm with you. Yeah.
It's a skating penguin, which, okay, that's your thing. But it's built like Fred Flintstone, and that's where my thing comes in. It is built like Fred Flintstone. First of all, that's not even a hockey penguin, because a hockey penguin would have like hockey lower body, and it's a Fred Flintstone penguin. So it's not even physics, this logo. So I have a real beef with that. And I also think Seattle Kraken should be number one. Kraken have hit it out of the park with marketing and with branding. And the fact that Kraken is 5 is an absolute travesty of justice.
By the way, the Preds finished 16th in this list. I would have had Detroit and Arizona 1 and 2. Okay. I would have had Seattle 3. I would have had Toronto 4. And then I voted, and I know I'm alone in this take, but I had Minnesota.
They do have a good
I just like that logo. I think it's
super cool.
Yeah.
It's not a leaf with letters.
Yeah. And then finally, our top 5 NHL mascots. No Nash on this list. Gritty, number 1.
Hands down.
Of course. Who else could it be? The New Jersey Devil, number 2. Bernie, the giant St. Bernard for Colorado, who I didn't even know was a mascot until just now. 3. Howler, the Coyote, number 4. And then Wild Wing from the Ducks, 5. Remember when Wild Wing used to be like the mascot in the NHL? Like, he was like the one that was like featured in like all the magazines and stuff. And he was like kind of like that iconic, like, everybody knew him.
Yeah, it's just not for me.
No.
That one's just not for me. Gritty, I love the Devils one, the stuff of nightmares. If that mascot, I have a thing about people or things in costume. I don't like to be approached by somebody in a costume. Mm-hmm. And that Devils one is my worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like also another iconic one. Like, had his own This Is Sports Center commercial. Where's Youppi? Youppi from the Montreal Canadiens. Like, he's in the Mascot Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like Montreal Expos, then Montreal Canadiens. Like, he was Gritty before Gritty. Like,
nobody was Gritty before Gritty, babe. Nobody was Gritty before Gritty.
Oh, I mean,
Gritty stands alone. He's the cheese. He stands alone.
Yeah, it's funny how now, everybody's like kind of going for like the cutesy, like they were going like for the animal mascot, and then Gritty came out, and it's just like every team is like, let's make our mascot just as grotesque as possible. Like, how can we just terrify small children now?
Yeah. I would take Gritty over the New Jersey Devils one any day. I also like Bowie. I know Bowie was very controversial when Bowie came out. I feel like I like Bowie. Still don't want him to approach me. I'm not into that, but better than that Devil. Oof. Whoa.
Yeah, he was like in the realm of just weird mascots.
Yeah. Here for that.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys have thoughts on these rankings as well. So let us know what you think. Comment on our YouTube page or tweet us at LO_Predators. We would love to hear from you guys. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can also find me on Twitter or X. I'm uncomfortable with
We'll figure it out one of these days.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with it. But I'm there at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me on that app we're talking about at LO_. No, that's the show. whatever. Find the show at LO_Predators.
There you go.
Find me at _NS Morgan. You can also read my work at penaltyboxradio.com. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back next week with all new episodes. We'll see you then.